20. Gospel legends shares that live like they are poor. What if I told you that some of gospel's biggest legends, the voices that shook heaven, packed arenas, and turned Sunday mornings into full-blown spiritual earthquakes, have been living lives so simple it almost feels unreal? Picture this for a moment. While fans imagined mansions, luxury cars, and million-dollar lifestyles, many of these icons were waking up in tiny homes, driving old cars, clipping coupons, and living with a discipline that looks nothing like the fame they earned. Behind the bright stage lights and powerful hallelujahs, some of gospel's most beloved stars live like they're poor. And once you hear their hidden stories, you'll never look at gospel royalty the same way again. 20. Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia Jackson became a voice the whole world recognized, yet she lived with the same simplicity she learned as a young girl in New Orleans. Even when her concerts pulled in crowds that wrapped around entire city blocks, she still preferred small homes, homemade meals, and quiet nights. She could have taken movie roles, nightclub deals, and commercial offers that promised enough money to change her entire lifestyle forever. But she kept saying no because she refused to sing anything that didn't honor her beliefs. Mahalia watched famous performers climb into huge mansions, drive luxury cars, and surround themselves with diamonds, but she never let fame push her into that world. She dressed modestly, handled her own errands, and gave away more money than she kept. Friends often said she lived more like a hard-working churchwoman than an international superstar. And that was true. Mahalia believed that too much comfort could make a person forget their purpose, so she stayed close to working-class communities and spent her days helping others. Even in her final years, after selling millions of records and influencing presidents, she still lived far below the lifestyle her success could have easily paid for. Her life became a powerful example of choosing calling over comfort and impact over wealth. 19. Shirley Caesar. Shirley Caesar has performed on global stages, won awards that fill entire walls, and built a name that most people know even outside the gospel world. But if you stepped into her daily life, you would never guess she reached that level of fame. She lives quietly, avoids luxury, and keeps her lifestyle as simple as it was when she first started singing as a young girl. She has the income to buy huge homes and expensive cars, but she chooses modest living because she believes her blessings should help others, not just herself. She spends most of her resources on feeding the needy, supporting families, and running programs that lift entire communities. Even after decades in the spotlight, she cooks her own food, shops in regular stores, attends church like an ordinary member, and moves through life without any desire to show off her success. Her choices come from her strong belief in service and humility. People who meet her in person often say she feels more like a warm, familiar church aunt than a famous legend who traveled the world. Shirley Caesar built a massive career, yet she still lives like someone who values people more than luxury, proving that true greatness doesn't need glitter to shine. 18. CeCe Winans. CeCe Winans is one of the most celebrated gospel singers of all time, with awards, albums, and accomplishments that could easily place her among the richest entertainers in the country. Yet she still lives with a level of simplicity that surprises almost everyone who meets her. Even with decades of success, she avoids luxury the same way many people avoid stress. CeCe prefers a quiet home, simple clothes, low-key routines, and the kind of day-to-day life that feels more like a regular church-going woman than a global icon. She has the ability to surround herself with expensive designers, private travel, and showy displays of wealth, but she chooses faith-centered living instead. Most of her money goes into ministry work, community programs, and helping people who never had the chances she did. She spends her time cooking at home, participating in church events, and living with the same values she was raised with. Fans often say they are shocked to see her behaving like someone who lives a modest, almost minimal lifestyle, even though she could easily live in over-the-top comfort. Her heart has always stayed grounded, and that grounding keeps her from chasing luxury. CeCe Winans proves that wealth means nothing if it pulls you away from your purpose. She built a career filled with global influence, yet she chose a lifestyle that reflects humility, spiritual discipline, and a detour to stay connected to her roots instead of chasing the things that fame usually brings. 17. Donnie McClurkin. Donnie McClurkin's voice has circled the world, reaching countries and audiences that many artists only dream about. With sold-out concerts, award-winning albums, and decades of influence, he could live like a top-level celebrity with all the luxuries that come with success. But Donnie's daily life looks much different. Instead of expensive mansions, he prefers modest living spaces. Instead of designer fashion, he wears simple clothes that match his humble personality. Instead of a life filled with showy celebrations, he keeps to quiet routines, church involvement, and community work. Many people assume he must live with great wealth because of how long he has been at the top of gospel music, but Donnie has always chosen a life that reflects discipline, calmness, and service. He gives away much of what he earns, supports ministries, helps families, and works closely with communities that struggle financially. His personal lifestyle stays simple because he believes comfort should never control his heart. Even when he travels internationally, he avoids unnecessary luxury and keeps things as normal as possible. Donnie McClurkin lives like a man who believes his voice is his mission, not his ticket to a wealthy lifestyle. His modest choices show the world that success does not have to change a person's values, and his grounded approach makes him one of the most respected figures in modern gospel music. 16. Kirk Franklin. Kirk Franklin is a giant in gospel music, shaping the entire sound of modern gospel and reaching levels of success that very few artists ever experience. He could surround himself with every luxury imaginable, from huge homes to designer wardrobes to extravagant cars. But Kirk still lives with the same caution and simplicity he learned as a child, who grew up with almost nothing. Instead of chasing wealth, he uses his platform to help others avoid the pain he went through. His home life is quiet, structured, and free from the wild spending often seen in the entertainment world. He prefers meaningful family moments over flashy events, home-cooked meals over expensive restaurants, and comfortable clothing over luxury brands. Kirk openly says that money never healed the wounds of his early years, so he never lets it control him now. Most of what he earns goes toward helping struggling communities, supporting youth, building programs, and uplifting people who come from the same background he did. Even with his massive influence, he walks through life like someone who never forgot the value of every dollar. His modest lifestyle shows his belief that true power comes from giving, not spending. Kirk Franklin could easily live like Hollywood royalty, but he chooses a grounded, everyday life filled with purpose rather than luxury. 15. Yolanda Adams. Yolanda Adams built a career that crossed from gospel into mainstream spaces, gaining fame, television opportunities, and worldwide recognition. With that level of success, many expected her to adopt a lavish lifestyle filled with red carpets, luxury fashion, and high-dollar living. But Yolanda has always moved differently. Her daily life is surprisingly simple for someone with her influence. She focuses on health, peace, and spiritual balance instead of chasing flashy comfort. She drives regular cars, prefers peaceful home environments, and keeps her everyday routines grounded and modest. Her earnings could support a much more extravagant lifestyle, but she chooses to invest in helping others, supporting charities, and giving back to the communities that shaped her. Yolanda avoids unnecessary spending because she believes humility keeps her connected to her purpose. Even though she stands tall on some of the biggest stages, she returns home to a life that feels calm and normal. Her friends often say she chooses the quiet path even when she has access to endless luxury. She cooks her own meals, spends time in her garden, enjoys simple activities, and stays far away from the chaotic, celebrity-style way of living. Yolanda Adams represents a version of success where faith, discipline, and modest choices matter more than shining in the spotlight. 14. Andraé Crouch. Andraé Crouch transformed gospel music in ways few people ever have. His songwriting shaped generations, and his influence reached churches, concerts and major artists across the world. With that level of impact, he could have lived in grand luxury, surrounded by expensive possessions and endless comfort. But Andre never cared about that lifestyle. He lived quietly, choosing modest homes, simple clothing, and routines that reflected a man who valued purpose over profit. Even after working with world-famous musicians, he stayed the same humble person he had always been. He spent his money carefully, often using it to help churches, support young artists, and fund community programs. Andre avoided showing off, avoided unnecessary spending, and kept himself grounded through faith and discipline. People often expected him to live like a wealthy star because of how much he accomplished, but he never let himself get pulled into that world. Instead, he lived exactly like the dedicated servant he believed he was. His home felt peaceful and ordinary. His lifestyle remained simple, and his priorities stayed rooted in helping others rather than elevating himself. Andre Crouch became a legendary figure, yet he continued to move through life like a man who understood that spiritual impact mattered far more than financial gain. 13. Thomas A. Dorsey. Thomas A. Dorsey created the very foundation of modern gospel music, yet he lived most of his life with the same modest habits he learned long before the world ever knew his name. Even after writing songs that spread across continents and became church standards, he never lived like a wealthy composer. Dorsey spent his days quietly, often in small homes, simple spaces, and working environments that felt more like a musician struggling to make ends meet rather than the man who shaped an entire musical genre. He believed his gift came with responsibility, not luxury, so he avoided the celebrity lifestyle completely. Instead of chasing big checks, he focused on helping churches grow, training young singers, and keeping gospel music rooted in faith rather than profit. Even as his songs traveled worldwide, he stayed grounded in small, everyday routines, like making his own meals, wearing simple clothes, and traveling on regular transportation when most artists around him were stepping into comfort. Many people were shocked when they learned that the writer behind some of the most powerful hymns in history still lived with the same modest rhythm he kept for decades. His money went back into ministry work, music programs, and supporting communities that needed help. Thomas A. Dorsey chose a life of purpose rather than luxury, proving that even the most influential figures can live like ordinary people when their hearts stay focused on service. 12. Albertina Walker. Albertina Walker earned the title Queen of Gospel. But she never lived like a woman who carried such a powerful crown. Her life stayed rooted in simplicity, community service, and a deep desire to lift others instead of using her success to elevate herself. Even with worldwide recognition, she preferred living in quiet neighborhoods, wearing modest clothing, and keeping her personal life private and humble. Albertina believed that fame was temporary, but kindness and service were lasting, so she spent much of her time supporting young gospel singers, raising funds for charities, and giving more than she kept. Fans expected her to enjoy a luxurious lifestyle because she had the talent, influence, and income to do so. But Albertina always chose the most ordinary path. She cooked her own food, attended local events without any special treatment, and handled everyday responsibilities with a calm humility that surprised people who admired her globally. She never surrounded herself with expensive items, preferring a simple home filled with love, memories, and spiritual peace. Albertina Walker showed the world that a true queen does not need diamonds or extravagant displays to shine. Her dedication to living modestly earned her even more respect because it proved that her heart always stayed bigger than her fame. 11. James Cleveland. James Cleveland became one of the most important names in gospel history. His choirs changed the sound of worship across the country, and his leadership built movements that influenced singers for generations. Yet despite all this power and recognition, he lived a surprisingly modest life. James preferred small homes, simple routines, and quiet spaces where he could work without distraction. Even though his concerts brought in crowds that filled entire arenas, he stayed committed to living with ordinary comforts instead of stepping into the luxurious lifestyle many expected. He gave much of his money to churches, gospel programs, and young musicians who needed help to start their careers. His focus stayed on ministry, not material gain. James never showed off his accomplishments, even though he had enough awards and achievements to fill entire rooms. Instead, he kept a humble attitude, choosing everyday living over celebrity wealth. He traveled modestly, dressed without flash, and spent most of his time working behind the scenes instead of celebrating his success. People who knew him personally always said he lived more like a hardworking choir director than a world-renowned gospel icon. His quiet living made his legacy even stronger, because it showed that his heart stayed rooted in service, faith, and simplicity. 10. The Clark Sisters. The Clark Sisters became global gospel icons, transforming harmonies, pushing boundaries, and influencing some of the greatest voices in modern music. Yet for many years, they lived far below the lifestyle people imagined. Their success grew slowly, and even when they reached worldwide recognition, they still lived with modest habits that came from their early years under their mother, Dr. Mattie Moss Clark. They spent much of their time in small rehearsal spaces, simple homes, and modest environments that kept them grounded. Despite selling millions of records and performing on huge stages, the sisters often lived with the everyday challenges of regular working families. They wore simple clothing, handled their own household responsibilities, and avoided the world of celebrity spending that surrounded other performers. Much of their income went back into church work, raising children, supporting ministries, and continuing the mission their mother started. They moved with humility, even when fans treated them like royalty. Their lives stayed centered on faith, family, and service, not luxury. Many people are surprised to learn how simple their lifestyles truly were behind the scenes, especially during the years when they were shaping the sound of gospel music for the entire world. The Clark Sisters showed that even legendary success does not have to change a person's heart or lifestyle. 9. Mavis Staples. Mavis Staples became famous through the Staple Singers and later as a solo artist, blending gospel, soul, and activism into a powerful cultural force. Even with her long career and global recognition, she still lives with the same simplicity she learned growing up in a close-knit family. Mavis prefers quiet homes, regular neighborhoods, and routines that feel peaceful and ordinary. She never chased expensive clothes, high-end accessories, or flashy living. Instead, she focuses on cooking at home, connecting with community members, and keeping her daily life grounded. Her fame could have taken her into luxurious circles, but she always chose comfort over extravagance. Much of her income supports artists, community projects, and causes that matter to her heart. Mavis believes purpose holds more value than wealth, so she avoids the glamorous lifestyle that many celebrities embrace. Her modest habits make her feel familiar and approachable, even though her voice shaped entire eras of music. She continues to live like someone who values peace, simplicity, and meaningful connection, proving that staying grounded can coexist with legendary status. 8. Edwin Hawkins. Edwin Hawkins changed gospel forever with a sound that reached every corner of the world, yet his lifestyle stayed quieter than anyone expected from a man of his influence. Even after "Oh Happy Day" became an international hit, he continued living in simple neighborhoods, wearing everyday clothing, and keeping a private, peaceful routine. Edwin never chased luxury. He preferred modest homes, calm environments, and the kind of normal daily life that made him feel grounded. Instead of stepping into the celebrity world of expensive cars, high-end fashion, or flashy events, he stayed focused on music, ministry, and helping young musicians grow. Edwin believed his calling mattered more than wealth, so he invested his earnings back into choirs, community programs, and creative projects. Friends often noticed that he lived like a hard-working music teacher rather than a global star with awards and worldwide recognition. His quiet personality showed through his simple routines like cooking meals at home, spending evenings practicing music, and choosing comfort over extravagance. Even though he had the financial ability to upgrade his life dramatically, he stuck to the same values he carried from childhood: humility, discipline, and service. Edwin Hawkins proved that a person can transform an entire genre while still living with the modest habits of an everyday neighbor, focused only on purpose and peace. 7. Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin became one of the most powerful and influential voices in music history, but behind the scenes, she lived with surprising modesty. Even after reaching worldwide fame, she never fully embraced the celebrity lifestyle. Her gospel background kept her grounded, and she carried those values throughout her life. Aretha preferred cooking her own meals, shopping at regular stores, and living in comfortable but simple homes. She avoided extravagant spending and often kept the same routines she followed before she became famous. Her income could have supported a life filled with constant luxury, but she chose ordinary comforts instead. She enjoyed driving her own car, spending quiet time with family, and staying close to her gospel roots. Much of her money went into supporting churches, musicians, and communities that needed help. Aretha lived with a mix of strength and humility, showing that success does not have to turn into extravagance. People often expected her to act like a superstar everywhere she went, but she behaved more like a warm, familiar figure who valued simple joy. Even at the height of her fame, she carried the same spirit she grew up with, living far below the lifestyle her fame could have provided. Her simplicity made her even more respected, because she never allowed her global impact to change the heart she built in the church. 6. Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke began in gospel with the Soul Stirrers, and even when he crossed into mainstream music, a part of him never left the simple, grounded life he came from. Though he became a major star with crowds, money, and fame surrounding him, Sam maintained modest habits that reflected his upbringing. He preferred simple clothing, calm living spaces, and routines that felt ordinary rather than glamorous. Sam spent much of his earnings supporting family members, helping churches, and funding young artists who could not afford opportunities. Even when he stepped into larger stages, he avoided living like a flashy celebrity. He stayed connected to his roots, carrying the spirit of a humble gospel singer rather than a mainstream superstar. Sam believed in investing back into people rather than filling his life with expensive possessions. Friends often said he behaved more like a hard-working, everyday musician than someone the world recognized. He focused on meaningful conversations, real community, and helping people find their own voice. His living spaces stayed modest, peaceful, and without unnecessary luxury. Sam Cooke became a symbol of quiet strength, using his success to lift others up instead of elevating his lifestyle. His simple approach to life became part of what made him unforgettable. 5. Marianne Williams. Marianne Williams had one of the strongest and most respected voices in gospel history. Yet she lived with a level of modesty that surprised almost everyone who understood her level of influence. Even after receiving awards, recognition, and opportunities that could have brought wealth, she continued living like a regular community member. Marianne avoided the spotlight outside of music. She preferred simple clothing, modest homes, and peaceful routines centered around church and family. She cooked her own meals, handled her own errands, and chose comfort over luxury every time. Her earnings often went toward helping struggling friends, supporting community causes, and encouraging young singers to stay focused on their craft. Marianne never allowed fame to shape her personality or her environment. She lived like someone who understood that money comes and goes, but purpose stays steady. Even when traveling for performances, she kept things simple, avoiding extravagant accommodations or celebrity-style treatment. Her gentle personality, paired with her powerful voice, created a unique image, a world-class singer living with the humility of a local church member. Her lifestyle reflected her belief that greatness should not change who you are at your core, and that belief shaped the quiet, simple way she moved through life. 4. Vanessa Bell Armstrong. Vanessa Bell Armstrong made waves in gospel with her powerful vocals and bold sound, but her real life stayed calm, simple, and grounded. Even after reaching national recognition, she continued living like an everyday woman rather than a celebrity. Vanessa preferred modest homes, comfortable clothing, and quiet routines centered around family and faith. She used her earnings to support her children, help struggling families, and contribute to church efforts rather than decorating her life with luxury items. She avoided the flashy lifestyle that many entertainers embraced, choosing to remain private and humble. Vanessa focused on health, emotional balance, and spiritual growth instead of chasing material success. Even when major opportunities came her way, she kept her life steady, choosing simplicity because it made her feel closer to her purpose. Her fans often describe her as warm, approachable, and deeply grounded, proof that her heart never changed, even when her career grew. Vanessa Bell Armstrong's modest lifestyle showed that faith-driven living does not need wealth to feel complete. Her choices kept her rooted in strength and authenticity. 3. Walter Hawkins. Walter Hawkins became one of the most respected composers and choir leaders in gospel history, with songs that shaped worship across generations. Yet behind all that influence, he lived with striking modesty. Walter preferred simple households, everyday clothing, and peaceful environments where he could think, pray, and create music without distraction. He handled his earnings responsibly, putting most of his resources into ministry work, choir development, and community support. Walter never cared about living like a celebrity, even though he had the success to afford it. He focused on lifting others, mentoring young talent, and building musical programs that gave opportunities to people with limited resources. His personal lifestyle stayed quiet and grounded, with routines centered around family, church, and creativity. Many people who met him said he carried himself like a gentle, humble leader rather than a famous composer. Walter Hawkins showed that the greatest contributions often come from those who live simply and stay committed to their purpose, not from those who chase wealth. 2. Rance Allen Rance. Allen had a voice that could shake entire buildings, yet he lived a life that felt peaceful, modest, and grounded. Even with a long career filled with awards, recognition, and respect, he chose the lifestyle of a hard-working, everyday man. Rance preferred simple living spaces, modest cars, and comfortable clothes that matched his down-to-earth personality. He spent most of his time serving in church, supporting families, and building relationships within his community. Rance avoided luxury because it did not fit the mission he believed in. Instead of chasing flashy success, he invested in ministry work, young musicians, and meaningful projects that helped people grow. His fans admired how approachable he remained, always smiling, always humble, always authentic. Rance Allen lived like someone who valued peace over wealth, purpose over status, and community over comfort. That grounded lifestyle became part of his legacy, showing the world that true greatness can live inside the simplest routines. 1. The Winans family. The Winans family became one of the most important families in gospel music, shaping generations with their harmonies and spiritual influence. With so much success, they could have easily adopted a lifestyle filled with wealth, luxury, and celebrity comfort. Instead, they lived like a close-knit, modest, working-class family. Their homes stayed simple, their clothing remained practical, and their routines centered around faith, prayer, and community. Much of their earnings went into ministry work, supporting churches, helping families, and developing young artists. The Winans avoided unnecessary spending, choosing meaningful living instead of flashy displays of fame. They traveled modestly, kept family traditions alive, and lived with the same humility they were raised with. Even though the world treated them like musical royalty, they moved through life with quiet discipline, proving that success does not have to change a family's values. Their grounded lifestyle became an example of how a legacy of faith can shine brighter than any luxury. And there you have it, 20 gospel legends whose real lives looked nothing like the riches people imagined. Some stayed humble to protect their peace. Some lived simply out of faith. And others carried secrets the world never bothered to ask about. But now that you've seen the truth behind the music, it makes you wonder, How many more stars are hiding lives that would shock everyone? If you want more stories that peel back the curtain and reveal what fame never shows, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming next.